Thank you for coming to our third quarter year-to-date briefing, as well as an update on Operation Safe Summer. But some of the partners were FBI, ATF, U.S. Department of Justice, Richmond Police, obviously, Virginia State Police, U.S. Marshals, the DEA, and the Richmond Commonwealth Attorney's Office. As when I get before you, I always like to talk about crime, not just where we were this time last year. I want to talk about it over the course of time. And we'll be providing all these slides to you also. You don't have to take feverish notes, so we'll send you this data. But going back 7 years, during the same time period, so we always want to compare Richmond to Richmond where we were in previous years. So the overall violent crime rate, as you can see, in 2018, at this time, during that time frame, we had 496 violent crimes. During this time, we had 407 for a really 18% reduction. And you can see the trajectory going down. So that's really important to us, comparing Richmond to Richmond. A lot of people want to talk about other cities with us, but we like to think there's no place like Richmond, certainly in the Commonwealth. And here's just the same time frame as we were talking about. So all these significant crimes down during that time frame. So murder, non-fatal shooting, robberies, and overall aggravated assault. Those are any assault that's a felony in nature. And another thing I like to talk about is persons shot. We talk about the murder rate, we talk about violent crime, but when you consolidate the gun-related homicide, gun-related non-fatal shootings, which are aggravated assaults and robbery shootings, this is an important number that we like to look at, because while we certainly have homicides that are stabbings, unfortunately we sometimes have homicides involving very young children due to child abuse. That's a different thing than gun violence. And gun violence, when we combine those three crimes, we look at 2022, we had 135 during that time period. Last year we saw a significant reduction to 115, and this year another reduction on top of that good work to 108. So 20% reduction from this time over in 2022, where we saw that spike in non-fatal shootings. Here's just some other issues, some other seizures that we had during Operation Safe Summer. So 2 machine gun conversion devices were taken. Those are commonly referred to as switches. Over $90,000 in cash. 247 guns are off our street from the men and women behind you. 276 felony arrests, 175 misdemeanor arrests, and 216 warrants served. So when I spoke at the mid-year, we are already in the midst of Operation Safe Summer, and one of the things I talked about at that time was we have to be nimble, we have to be able to adjust to the reality of what's going on. And at that time, we took members of Operation Safe Summer and safely secured the graduations. We made a couple of gun arrests during that. We had something similar pop up during this time, during this quarter as well, that I want to talk about, and that's the Shockoe Bottom focus. So August 2nd, we had a homicide in the Shockoe Bottom on North 20th Street. So we had an individual who was shot and killed there. And I was on scene there along with other members of senior command staff. That case was very quickly solved because we had an officer on a hotspot curve a couple blocks away. And the hotspot curve, as you all know, is that area of the city where we have officers on a 10 to 15 minute visits. We had a supervisor on scene doing that. When he heard the gunfire, was able to quickly make an arrest in that case. He was just a block or so away and was able to seize the murder weapon and make sure that person didn't hurt anyone else. But while we were down there, we noticed some things that we'd been hearing from the precincts that were very concerning. So open carry of firearms. When I saw people walking around the Shockoe Bottom, everyone was walking around. I saw multiple people with guns, and it became very concerning to us. So the following weekend, we instituted a plan where we had not only the plan we had already had in place to address the crowds in the Shockoe Bottom, we added Operation Safe Summer to that. So those men and women behind you, I annoyed them by making sure that they spent their very focused area in the Shockoe Bottom on those Friday and Saturday nights when the crowds were biggest, in order to try to avoid significant violent crime. For those of you that follow what happened recently in Birmingham, where there was in their entertainment district, they had a mass shooting of 4 people shot and killed, 17 shot and wounded in one incident. They're still working on that case in Birmingham, but that's the kind of thing that concerns me that could happen in the Shockoe Bottom, where you have multiple people walking around with firearms and multiple people who are engaged in partaking in alcohol, and it's just a recipe for disaster. So we flooded that zone. During the month, 33 firearms were seized by the officers of Operation Safe Summer. In the Shockoe Bottom alone, 17 were seized by patrol officers doing that same work. And I want to share with you, there's probably 3 times as many guns that we saw that were open carrying, that were not illegal, that we didn't seize. So the guns in the Shockoe Bottom were just overwhelming, particularly during that time. I'm going to show you a little video clip that some in the media have asked us about. We are aware of it. It was posted, not by us obviously, but it was posted by a community member, and it assisted in our investigation. We ended up making an arrest in this case. Let's see if it'll work for us. So as you can see, there are flashing blue lights in the back of that. That video went on for a little bit longer. There was a fight. Our officers rapidly responded. As you can see, there was a young lady who pulled a gun out and fired in the air. That is a recipe for disaster when you have other individuals all around them with firearms. People are intoxicated, people are fighting. That could have ended in what we saw in Birmingham. So I'm very pleased with the fact that the officers were right where they needed to be and stopped that incident from escalating. That individual was charged with reckless handling of a firearm in the 1700 block of East Franklin Street. And as crazy as that is, it concerns me that it could have been much, much worse. So I mentioned some of our partners. At this time, I would ask Darrell Logwood from the ATF to come up and talk about an operation they partnered with us on. And some of the areas that we asked our friends at ATF to focus on are some of those hotspots that I talked to you all about, the 24 hotspots, and they were able to do that. So Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Washington Field Division, Darrell Logwood. Please come on.
Thank you, Chief. Hey. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darrell Logwood. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge for ATF's Washington Field Division. I'm honored to be here today to represent ATF alongside our partners from the Richmond Police Department, as well as our state, federal, and local partners. Over the past several months, law enforcement partners worked collaboratively to identify and disrupt individuals that were responsible for violent criminal acts and associated narcotics distribution in the city of Richmond. The use of crime gun intelligence and traditional investigative techniques, including over 50 undercover operations over this operation, led to 7 defendants being federally indicted for 51 total counts. Additional charges for other individuals are pending approval and are being pursued. 44 firearms in this investigation were seized, 7 of them stolen. 2 of them were from a burglary of a federal firearms licensee in Henrico County. 9 machine gun conversion devices were stolen. Chief previously mentioned those are known as switches, or were seized, my apologies. And also as part of this operation, approximately 26 grams of methamphetamine, 44 grams of cocaine base, 138 grams of fentanyl powder or mixture, 28 grams of heroin, and 3,000 pressed pills. What you see here is a representative sample of the firearms that were purchased and seized during this operation. See, the majority of what you have on the screen are handguns, and then a number of long guns, and then the last 3 items that are on there are the machine gun conversion devices or switches that the chief had referenced. Right. That concludes my part of this presentation, but I would like to end by thanking Chief Edwards for his leadership and commitment to the citizens of Richmond, as well as the partnerships for everybody that's represented here in this room, from FBI, from DEA, from our partners at the Virginia National Guard, Richmond Police Department, Henrico Police Department, Virginia State Police, our U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as the Richmond Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. And I thank you for your time. And thank you, Chief.
Appreciate you. All right, and I think that's a good example of what we can do when we get people together, working in these areas where we're experiencing gun violence, taking this type of hardware off the streets of our city so they can't hurt anybody else. Something we talk about a lot, but I'll give you an update on this. Richmond Police Department has obtained free gun safes for the community. So in 2024, we've already given out 75 of those. Last year, as you know, as I've reported out previously, 248 of these gun vaults have been given to our community. And I'd like to give one quick example. So earlier in the year, and this is something that is a challenge throughout the nation right now, where there are threats about gun violence in our schools. So we conducted an investigation after learning of it from the Richmond Public School System in one of our schools, where we learned that an individual was overheard making threats to come back and shoot up the school. That individual, that juvenile, was interviewed by our school resource officers and determined that there was a gun that he had access to in his own home. So we went directly to the home, met with the parent. The parent confirmed that there was a gun that was insecured in their home. We offered to take that from the parent. They declined that offer. We documented that, and then we offered one of these safes, and we showed that parent how to use it. So that's what's important. If we can take that off the table so that people can safely secure their weapons, every time I get in front of a crowd, I want to keep messaging that it's so important that Second Amendment's a right, but it's also a responsibility. So we can help make that gun a non-option for that child to bring into one of our schools. That's just an example, and all of our commanders have access to that. So the precinct commanders, if one of our officers find a legal gun that's owned legally but insecure, we'll respond out and take that off the table and make sure that they have the ability to lock that weapon away from prying hands. And that's the phone number for Dr. Wynn Andrews. If you or someone you love and lives in Richmond and has a gun that they can't secure, call that number. She'll do an evaluation, and we will make sure that we take care of that for you. Another part of Operation Safe Summer was our late night gyms, and this is not just with the Richmond Police Department. This is our other city partners. So from June 1st to August 19th, Friday and Saturday nights, Richmond youth could go to the Gill Center or the Richmond Technical School of the Arts on Friday and Saturday nights and play basketball in a safe environment. Richmond Police Department was present to provide security, but Parks and Rec were present and other city entities to help give an outlet for some of our kids to do something positive in the summer. And as you can see, it was utilized a lot. So I also talk about part of our strategy is community engagement, our community walks. We were in Manchester Lakes Apartment on July 17th, St. John's Wood on August 21st, September 18th, we had to postpone it, but we're going to do that once the weather gets a little better. And the next one is going to be in Oak Grove on October 16th. That's in 112, and these are all areas that are experiencing gun violence. It's important for our community to see us out there when there's not crime scene tape up, when they can get to engage and talk to us about their specific challenges and their concerns. We can address it when things are calm. And in that same vein, we talk about our pop-ups. Every month we do that as well. The next one's going to be October 29th in 3rd Precinct. I think we're still waiting on the exact location, but it will be in 3rd Precinct. And it's going to be a trunk or treat this time, so we'll be having police cars with candy, maybe even some officers. I'll convince them to dress up like something other than a police officer, maybe a firefighter, and for Halloween, and see if they can give out candy. But we'll do that on the 29th. And just follow our social media, and we'll be putting that out there. So now we're going to talk about year-to-date crime. So we finished the 3rd quarter 2 days ago on September 30th. And before we start, I just want to give another snapshot of violent crime in our city. And as you can see, since in the last 10 years, on a yearly basis, these are the violent crimes that are reported to the Richmond Police Department. A nice steady decline in most years. There's some back and forth. 2020 is obviously a little bit of an anomaly, but much of that is due to COVID and the civil unrest, we believe, where everyone seemed to be home at that time. But then we see that nice trajectory down from a high in 2013. And everyone remembers 2013, 2014, those years as very low violent crime rates, and many of them were, but I think this is important for our community to know too. In this day and age of social media, people see things like the video that I showed you about the lady shooting in the air, and crime feels like it's everywhere. It's important to talk about the hard data. That's not to say that the feelings of the community aren't important, but when I talk about crime, I want to talk about our hard data, and this is some of it. And here's a snapshot of our violent crime, again for the year-to-date for the 3rd quarter. So overall, last year I presented on a 7% reduction in overall violent crime. This year, we're on pace for an 8% reduction on top of that good work. Homicides are 18% down, so 55 versus 45. Aggravated assaults, that's any felony assaults, are down 5%. Rapes are down 46%, and then robbery individuals are up slightly. But if you remember at the mid-year, we were way up. So we're doing much better in that. We think it's based upon some of the good arrests we've made where there were hyper offenders of people robbing multiple people over the course of months that we finally were able to make arrests, and we're not seeing those same type of robberies right now. It's trending in the right direction for us. Still way too many, but trending in the right direction. So non-fatal shootings, they are up 3%, but again, I'll remind you, we are fighting incredible numbers from last year. Last year we had a 26% reduction in all non-fatal shootings. This year we're up a bit, but we're again, for the quarter, trending in the right direction. We talk a lot about our hot spots. So 24 of our hot spots, and as I've mentioned many times, my team's sick of me talking about it, but we looked at the crime of gun-related homicides, non-fatal shootings, non-fatal shooting robberies, shooting into occupied dwellings, shooting into occupied vehicles. We came up with that list over the past 5 years, and then we added the last 6 months. And every 6 months we do a new assessment and look for where these hottest spots are. And you can see the little dots there. It's not really that easy, but when you look at where our gun violence is for the year, this is an overlay of a heat map showing that, of persons shot. So we are in the right place at the right time, these neighborhoods and these areas where not only where we're focusing on, but if you saw the maps that the ATF talked about, they were in some of these areas as well, where the hottest parts of our city, so Fairfield, Mosby, and Gilpin Court, the hottest parts of our city is where they were doing their important work with us. Something else I always talk about is accidental shootings. So last year, we had 20 people accidentally shoot themselves in Richmond at this time. We're down to 19, which is still way too many, and 5%. Unfortunately, 4 of those this year were juveniles, 7 last year. So these are people that don't understand gun safety that accidentally shoot themselves. And those are, to be honest, those are just the ones we've been able to get them to tell us they shot themselves. There's plenty of people that we suspect shot themselves, but we just can't prove it. These are cases that we can prove are accidental shootings. This is another number that I'm very proud of, and it's a regional problem. And this year to date, we have 13 traffic-related fatalities. That's down from the same time last year of 22 traffic-related fatalities. Now, those traffic-related fatalities, that's a 41% reduction, and that's really, I think, due to some of the good work we're doing. That's due to some of the technology that we're employing. But if you look on the news every day, whether it's a pedestrian, a motorcyclist, or just a person killed in a crash, and those people have families too. Those people have people that love them and will miss them. Their lives are just as important, so whether you're killed by the bullet or killed by a car that's driving too fast, the loss for those families is just the same, and we need to take it as a police department just as seriously. And we're trying to do that with enforcement, but there's also what I'm doing right now, which is an education piece. And nobody in the Commonwealth, I believe, cares more about the engineering of our city streets to slow folks down than the city of Richmond. So I must really thank the members of the Department of Public Works who have put bump outs. They've utilized speed bumps and other technical ways that they can slow traffic down. But that's my message to everyone. Slow down, whether you're on a motorcycle or you're in a car. If you slow down, not only does it give you a better reaction time to not have the crash, but also, if you do have a crash, there's a higher survivability rate. So that's what I would say to folks. And while we're excited about some of the reductions we're seeing, the big reduction we're seeing, we know that 13 is still way too many. And the goal of Vision Zero is zero traffic deaths. And again, this is one of the programs that we talk about a lot, our camera safety program. Here are the violations that the 2 locations have already since March of 2024, 13,298. So we have just crossed the threshold from the warning letters that people have got to enforcement for those other 9 locations. So 18 more cameras, 9 locations, and we'll talk about some of the possible violations that we're seeing. These are letters that were warnings that were sent out to people at different locations. Obviously, some are much more prolific than others. We have one that we discovered at Swansboro Elementary We have the cameras in place. They're not working for some reason, so we're examining what we need to do to fix that specific camera. But you can look at Westover Hills on Jank Road, only one warning has been issued. And contrary to that, at McClenny Elementary on Chamberlain, 2,732. That is people right around in the reason we put these by schools, that's our most precious resource, our children. So they should be slowing down during those times. And that's the other crazy thing. This is not every day. This doesn't happen on weekends or holidays. It only happens 4 hours during the day, 2 in the morning for drop off and 2 hours in the afternoon for pickup. So that's just 4 hours a day, 5 days a week on average, and we're seeing this level of speeding. So again, we're hoping that once people start getting tickets in those particular areas that they start slowing down. All right, now I'll transition to property crime. So theft from motor vehicles, which is always one of our most challenging crimes, is down 11%. That's really important to us. That is a crime that we are still struggling with. It's still a huge number, but again, doing better than last year. Theft of motor vehicle parts and accessories, and those are majority catalytic converters, also sometimes license plates. That's the one below it that's down 27%. That's again on a huge reduction last year. So that's a good example of utilizing legislation to really solve a problem, and great investigation on the catalytic converter theft. So we were getting hammered by that for a couple years there, where people were sliding under cars with Sawzall, cutting off catalytic converters. We had very little tools in our toolbox to arrest someone. We could stop someone with 15 catalytic converters in their car. Because there was no VIN on it, we would have very little proof to be able to prove that they were stolen. Now it's illegal to even possess them without a license. So that has really changed the game and is saving us some crime. But the negative things that we're going to talk about are, again, we continue to struggle with shoplifting. That's up 16%. Burglary total, now that's getting more towards the average. And motor vehicle theft up 4%. While that's an increase, it's slowing down from where we were this time last quarter. So this quarter is getting a little better, and we're hoping to get that number down by the end of the year with some of the tactics we're utilizing. For an overall increase of property crime of 1%, and major crime over this time last year is flat. So violent crime, 8% down. Obviously there's much fewer violent crimes than our property crimes, but overall property crime up 1% for an average of 0% increase. I talked about theft from motor vehicles, and while that's a crime that affects much of our community, 410 guns were stolen this year alone, year to date, out of mostly unlocked cars. And if you see in the heat map, it's almost all in the Shockoe Bottom. And we talked about the issues with the Shockoe Bottom with armed people, but there's also people leaving guns in their cars when they go to the clubs. They can't walk into the clubs with their guns, and thieves know that and are stealing guns. And those guns end up in the hands of criminals. You know, the gun that was used to shoot our officer just 2 weeks ago was stolen out of an unlocked car in one of the local counties. And that's incredibly frustrating to me. As I mentioned that day, I got that call. The first information I got was that we got an officer shot, and my mind went to the worst place. I thought I was going to have to deal with a dead officer. Now, once I got on scene and learned that his wound was non-life-threatening, I was relieved. But watching that body camera, I know how close we came to not only him being shot, but some of the officers that were around him when that happened. So that is a totally preventable crime. That gun stolen out of an unlocked car ends up in the hands of a 16-year-old kid that's used to shoot a Richmond police officer. That is a totally preventable crime. That child should not have had access to that weapon. So it's frustrating to me, and I want our community to understand that the Second Amendment's a right. It's also a responsibility. Secure your guns. We talked about the other property crime issue with us with motor vehicle theft. What I think is driving some of that down is the wheel locks that we have purchased through grant funding and through other means to give to our community. If you're a Richmond resident, you have a Kia or Hyundai, which are the majority of the cars stolen, you can go by your local precinct at any time and ask for one of these steering wheel locks. I give them out at community meetings. And we're also going to have an event on October 19th where we will be giving it away at Westover Hills Elementary at 1211 Jank Road. So at that school on this day, If you have proof that you're a Richmond resident and we see you in a Hyundai or Kia, we're going to not only give you one of these wheel locks, we're going to show you how to use it. And that is the best way to deter criminals, because some of these cases that we're capturing, some of these reported thefts aren't actual thefts, they're attempted thefts. So the thieves come in, they smash the window, they smash the steering column, try to steal the car and can't. We still capture it as a statistic of attempted motor vehicle theft, so that's one of those numbers. But it's also that person can't go to work, they have to spend thousands of dollars often out of pocket to have that car fixed, and it's almost just as bad as having their vehicle stolen. So this is a way that with the enforcement that we're doing, utilizing technology to arrest and recover stolen vehicles that we have in place, and making those key arrests, but the long-term solution, part of the solution is making it a harder target to steal, which is these wheel locks, we believe, help do that. All right, so at this time, I'm happy to answer a few questions. So John, I can see you're chopping at the bit. What do you got for me? By the way, someone sent me that video of the lady yelling at you when we were doing our interview. Yeah, that was, hey, John.
So, you were kind of forced this year to start in April. Plan on starting in April again next year for Operation Safe Summer?
I hope not. I hope we can stick to the summer and not have to start in the spring. But it's nice to know that we have the kind of partners that will stand with us when we need them most.
Obviously, you guys had a double shooting homicide Saturday off Ruffin Road at the apartments. What's the status with that case? I heard that victim just got out of DOC that morning. Is that a motive for this?
I think we're still working through the motive on that. I can tell you that we're making very good progress on that case. Detectives have been working around the clock. We're also making very good progress on the earlier homicide from that week, which took place in the bushes at 200 block of Richmond Highway that I'm sure you're familiar with. So those cases, we hope to have some good news shortly on those.
A couple weeks ago, I think Enrico put out Wanted Dangerous Guy that was in connection with something you guys had as well. I understand maybe that guy's been arrested in West Virginia. Can you confirm that? It's the Xavier
Perkins?
Yeah, Xavier Perkins.
I believe so, but let us check and we can send you a response in writing on that one.
I have a question about the hot spots. Over the summer, you guys were patrolling these areas,
Yes.
observed what you saw, learned what you learned. Were there any new areas that you saw or observed that weren't included in that 24, and those 24 hotspots that will be added to next year's, or anything you saw that should be included for next year?
Well, again, our crime analysis team does a reevaluation every 6 months, so we could see that shift a bit, but I'd be surprised. The only thing that I would say that did shift was the Shockoe Bottom. So that was a case where we certainly had one homicide, but it's not a traditional area where we experience gun violence as much as some of the others. We certainly have had incidents in the bottom. But what we were trying to do was pivot and be proactive so we didn't have what's happened in other cities and what could easily happen in our city.
You see with the vape shop that you guys knocked off yesterday with the raid, there's a woman in that area that calls me constantly about drugs and drug dealers in that area. Is that what community members you're asking them to do, is just keep calling to give you the information so you can make that kind of a bust?
Yes, so that was led by our focus mission team from the 4th Precinct. Part of their goal through their precinct commander is to listen to members of the community and members of city council. So a lot of people that won't talk to us directly will call Ms. Robertson, will call other city council members, and they'll get us that information. They'll make that complaint. So we ask anyone in the community, if you know something about this, contact us. We don't need to know who you are to know who they are, and we'll start an investigation. We are short-staffed, but as you can see from the work that I've talked about, we're still very good when we get information on following up, conducting thorough and competent investigations, and solving problems. So once we can work on it. A lot of times when I go to community meetings, some residents will get frustrated with us because they're calling 911 to talk about drug hotspots or incidents like this vape shop. So what I would say to them is 911 is not the right tool for that. Contact your police precinct. Contact me. Plenty of people do that. Contact the police department so we can work on it long term. The patrol officers are running from call to call to call to call. The men and women behind you who work in the focus mission team and some of our other specialized units, don't answer calls for service. They're there to work on special projects within those designated areas of responsibility. And when they can work on it, they have the time and resources and training and acumen to be able to really solve some of those problems.
You mentioned that violent crime has been down over the past couple of years. What will the department continue to do so that in the next 10 years violent crime is still down? What do those efforts look like from you guys in the department to keep that crime going down?
Well, it has to be an all of the above approach. We can't do it alone in the Richmond Police Department. We not only have our law enforcement partners, but we also have partners throughout the city, nonprofits. There's members here of the neighborhood team, the newly formed neighborhood team from the city that looks at crime in a different way of diffusing crime. We talk about our Richmond community mediators that try to find ways, unique ways, and interesting ways to disrupt crime. And then it takes regular community members, us talking and collaborating together, everyone pulling in the same direction to lower that crime rate. But for us, we have a very special role in that. And part of that is the enforcement that I'm talking about today. We also have a very robust deterrent strategy. So let me go back to, let's see, one of these slides. So if you look at the bottom corner of this, you'll see hotspot CFS, that's call for service year to date, 15,913 calls for service. Those are self-generated calls by members of our patrol officers. They go to these hotspots, mark out for 10 to 15 minutes, and deter crime. And what I'm really interested in when we do that is not only do studies show that it disrupts crime, the criminals see those officers in these areas at random intervals, and it causes them to do something different. But the other thing that I think is an ancillary benefit of that I'm really interested in is the good folks who live in these crime-ridden neighborhoods get to see our officers and feel a bit safer. So the perception of crime is addressed too. So we have the deterrent strategy, we have the enforcement strategy. I think when we work with our partners, we can disrupt crime going forward. So it's an all of the above approach. Again, I think technology is a piece for that. We're going to continue to invest in technology to arrest offenders. But the best, what I hope to be able to do is disrupt crime before it starts and get to children earlier with our partners to help them avoid some of the pitfalls that some of the individuals that are caught up in this life with gangs and violent crime, disrupt them from going that direction. I think that's the long-term solution.
So during the Operation Safe Summer, the April to September, that 407 violent crimes that you showed us, among that, are you able to talk about what percentage or at least the number involved teens or just young minors, anybody under 18?
We can get you that data, but there's certainly, unfortunately, we've had 7 juveniles killed this year. 6 of them were from gun violence, and 1 was from child abuse, a baby, essentially, a very young child. So 6 of those individuals were killed, and we only had 2 killed last year, so that is a concerning uptick. And we've had several accidentally shoot themselves, and several, I think we had 20 juveniles shot and wounded this year, which is abhorrent. So, but we can get you those specific details. But when I look at the average age of our murder victim, unlike many other urban cities, it's not teens. It's someone in their 30s. It's usually men, and it's not related to gang or drug territory. It's related to arguments that escalate from a verbal argument to a physical dispute into gunfire many times. At that, I think you had a question.
Yeah, specifically on pedestrian deaths, what role does the police department play in working to reduce those types of deaths to 0?
Well, I think certainly the city has to address it with engineering and crosswalks and things like that. We have to enforce speeding. Speed is the number one factor. DUIs can be a factor. DUID can be a factor. But the majority of it is people not paying attention on their cell phones, and they end up killing someone. So our role is to enforce the law and to leverage the technology that we're using to get folks in Richmond to slow down.
I know last time you had one of these quarterly briefings, it almost seemed like instantly violent crime spiked the next week or two. What do you say to people out there now that are looking at this and thinking about doing something tonight or the following night?
Well, we work 24/7, and the partnerships of the men and the women in this room don't end just because Operation Safe Summer ends. So we're still continuing to collaborate. We're still working on it. And I would just say to people, think about it. Because I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I've been in court enough with people who have shot and killed people. I've sat across a table from people when they're confessing to murders. And there are very few evil men in this world. Very few evil people who kill someone. They're generally people that make a stupid decision that if they could go back in time, they would. I've seen enough people crying at the sentencing hearings, begging mothers for forgiveness, begging the judge to be lenient on them, apologizing to their own families. So that's what I would say to them. And the decision to not react violently with gunfire, it's very difficult to decide that when you're in the heat of the moment. What I would say is if you're hearing this message, or if any of you talk to your family and loved ones, that decision starts before the fight starts. The decision starts to saying to themselves, I'm not going to take my gun to this neighbor dispute over a barking dog. I'm not going to bring my gun to the rap video shooting that may escalate into gun violence. That's what I would say to people, because I see the regret in many of their faces. And we all know people in this city. If you've worked in this city long enough, you know people. And I've known plenty of people who have sons who have killed people. And they're not bad people. They're good people that make terrible decisions.
What is the difference between how the department responded on Operation Safe Summer compared to how you all will respond now that it's over?
Well, we had partnerships directly with the Virginia State Police in cars together with our focus mission team. So that's not going to happen in that same way. And we're going to continue to work on cases, but it's not going to be that laser-like focus like that we had. You have to put a time limit on some of these things. We can't be everywhere at all hours, and we can't continue to ask for help 24/7. So I think that leveraging these partnerships for a specific period of time is the best way to go forward. And then again, like I've said, we had a plan this summer to start June 1st. We pivoted when the information on the ground changed, and we will do that again if needed.
Regarding the vape shop raid, a number of city officials have been expressing increasing concern about vape shops as kind of centers of criminal activity. Is that something that's borne out by what you all are seeing in the data that you have?
Well, it's definitely concerning. I'd be surprised if it's as egregious as this particular shop is, but we're seeing them pop up everywhere, not just in the city, in the counties as well. And I've heard that too. I've heard that not only in city meetings, I've heard it at community meetings where community members are asking me, why are there 3 vape shops with highly colored fluorescent lighting that's probably designed to attract kids in our city? They're 3 in one block. How do they even make money? Well, we see how this one's making money by selling marijuana illegally and other drugs. But I think it's definitely something that the city needs to get a hold of, because I just see it increasing. Every week it seems like another vape shop opens up. And there may be zoning things that can be done. There may be other city code legislation that could try to address this challenge. All right, any questions from our friend at ATF? He's a nice guy too, so he's got a nice suit on today. He's looking sharp. But all right, well, I appreciate everyone coming. If you need anything from us, we'll send you the slides and the underlying data. So.